Okay, I want to introduce John Antal. You might know him. He's a prolific writer. I've read his books before. Last year at where I was at, he came and spoke twice. Now, all of you should have had his slides. I sent you his phenomenal podcast he did called A Dictator's Dream. If you did not listen to that, integrity, all of the Cascade Rifles owe me 50 push-ups right out there. You know it. But it's terrific. He's a transformative leader. Like I said, I listened to him last year when he came to where I was at, second to none. He's a forward thinker, and not only that, he's passionate about winning. I could go on and on and on about who John Antal is, but needless to say, sir, it is an absolute honor that you joined us today. Thank you so much, and I'll stop talking to give you maximum time.
Thank you. The honor is mine. I appreciate all the kind words. Let's get started. I'm going to share screen. Okay, somebody tell me that we've got a full slideshow going on. Can you see it? That a yes? Yes, sir. Okay, outstanding. Here we go. I'm going to talk about the next war and fighting in real time. Now, I want you all to pay attention to this. I know it's right before lunch. But some of the things that I'm going to say here could keep your soldiers alive as we go into the next war, which could be tomorrow. We don't know when war is going to happen. You have to be ready. Let's talk about it. First, everything in this briefing is unclassified. Only open source information was used for this presentation. Okay, and if you could mute the microphones on the other end, I'd appreciate it. Okay, the methods of war are changing. If I had showed you... All right, can you hear me now? Is that a yes? Okay, good. So here we are. The methods of war are changing. And if I'd showed this picture to you a decade ago, you would have not known what it was, and you would have thought maybe it was an alien. Okay, but this is in fact a Ukrainian FPV drone operator. How many drone operators do you have in your unit? And are you ready? So there are many things changing warfare, but some things remain very important for you to study that are constant, and those are our enemies. Now, they might be growing, but right now we have four major opponents that you need to know how they fight. The first are the Russians. If you're not reading about how the Russians are fighting in Ukraine and learning about how their tactics are failing or winning, depending on how which sector you look at it, then you are not doing what you should be doing. You're professional soldiers. You need to study the enemy. What do you know about the Russian army? The next is the Chinese army. The Chinese could launch an attack that we could be involved in a world war any day. We don't know if it's going to happen, but you need to be prepared. You can't say it's not going to happen. You don't know. You must be prepared because you're the soldiers. You're the professional military. So what do you know about the Chinese military? The next are the North Koreans. The North Koreans are poised to attack on very short notice against U.S. forces in Korea. They could put us in a war in hours. Now, we don't know what they're going to do. Neither do you, but we need to be ready. What do you know about the North Korean army? And then the Iranian army, the Iranian military. What do you know about the Iranian military? Because right now we are at war with Iran's proxy forces. We are fighting in the Gulf of Aden, and we are right now in the Red Sea watching the surrogates of Iran fire missiles at our Navy. And all it takes is for one of our ships to get unlucky and they get hit and we could be at war with Iran. What do you know about the Iranians and how they fight? Also, are you studying these wars? How many of you know about the Second Nagorno-Karabakh War in 2020? The first war in history to be won primarily by robotic systems. Somebody come up and tell me that, in fact, you know about this war. Anyone? Somebody. So nobody knows. Okay.
I don't know if this is on, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so you know. All right, so the Second Nagorno-Karabakh War of 2020, very important war to understand. Started on the 27th of September 2020, ended November 10th, 2020. 45 days, decisive military combat. Ended in a decisive military victory by Azerbaijan over Armenia. Again, the first war in history to be won primarily by robotic systems. For those two reasons, decisive military action and the first war in history to be won by robotic systems, you should know about this war and study it. There are lessons for you to learn. The next is the Israeli-Hamas war of 2021. Not the war that's going on now, but the 11-day war that happened in 2021. In this war, the Israelis were able to track their enemy leaders, even though they were deep underground, and kill them with what is as close to a kill web, an AI-enabled kill chain that exists anywhere on Earth. It was so devastating that Hamas sued for a ceasefire after 11 days, and since the Israelis considered this just a normal action of mowing the grass, they gave it to them. But that was the first war in history primarily won by artificial intelligence. Did you know that? The next is the ongoing Russo-Ukrainian war, which has a tremendous number of leadership and tactical lessons for us to study. How many case studies do you have of the Russo-Ukrainian war that you teach to your leaders, that you use in your LPD programs? 1, 2? I mean, there are many that you should be studying. So pick out 1, pick out 2, pick out 3, study them in depth, learn about them, and then figure out what you can learn from that fighting. And then the next is the Middle East war that happened in October 2023 and is still ongoing as the ceasefires either break or don't. That war has some of the most important lessons for us to learn about how to fight in real time. And that is what this is all about. Modern warfare is about fighting it by seconds, fighting in real time. So the ongoing Russo-Ukrainian war, the Middle East war, what's going on in the Red Sea, the Israeli-Hamas war of 2021, and even the Second Nagorno-Karabakh war show an evolution of how time is critical and how the sensors and the strikers are now being fused to work in real time. And that's what we need to work on. That is the difference between 20th century war and 21st century war. Now, these are 10 disruptors that I believe you should take a picture of this screenshot. You should take this and you should use these whenever you conduct a military operation. You should consider these and how they're going to change what you may be planning or what you may be doing. The first is the transparent battle space at the top. The transparent battle space simply means that there are more sensors now in the battle space if the enemy wants to use them to find everything that you have than ever before. There is no place to hide. And because of the long-range precision fires, there's nowhere to run. There are no sanctuaries. And you have to take extraordinary measures to mask your forces. To mask your forces. The next is the first strike advantage. Our enemies will not give us warning of an attack. If the Russians ever go crazy enough to attack us in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Poland, or Germany, they will do so without warning. If the Chinese decide to go against Taiwan, they will do so without warning. Now, you might say, we have a great intelligence agencies. We should be able to know ahead of time if they're coming. And I can tell you how many times they were wrong and how many surprises we've had in the last 50 years. So the enemy will use a first strike against us. And since we are in peacetime configuration, since most of our soldiers live in barracks that are not bunkers, that are not protected, just even Tower 22 in the Middle East, in the Jordan-Syrian border, where we had soldiers in basically peacetime barracks, were hit by a drone. They weren't in bunkers. So that first strike advantage is something we need to think about, because across the Pacific, across Europe, in Korea, also in the United States, we are in peacetime configuration and we are easy targets to kill. The next is artificial intelligence and the tempo of war. Artificial intelligence is changing everything in our society. It'll change even greater in the next few years. You will see some tremendous things change, and it is because of the use of artificial intelligence. But one of the things that it does is it, in a military context, is it speeds up the tempo of war by providing precision, providing ways that weapon systems can't be jammed, and by assisting in decision making. Now you say assisting in decision making, I haven't seen that. Well, but yes, you have. Every day when you use your phone and you use GPS navigation, you are using an AI system, a simple AI system, but one that speaks to you and gives you turn-by-turn directions. That same kind of thing is going to be applied to military aspects in greater ways in the years ahead. The next is top attack. Earlier, Bob Leonard talked about, how do you look at an enemy tank in your mind? What did you see? Did you see the side? Did you see the flank? You should see the top. Top attack is the preferred method of war now. Everything is being attacked from the top. And because of that, we have to think differently. You can't think two-dimensionally. It's not about the thickness of your frontal armor anymore. It's about whether the drone will see you and kill you. The next is fully autonomous. More and more weapon systems will be fully autonomous. Some of you say, not American, because we don't believe in that. But yes, we do. We have weapon systems that are fully autonomous. We have the Phalanx weapon systems that is on ships. We have a CRAM system which shoots down mortar rounds. That has to be automatic so that there's not enough time for a human to make a decision. We have the Patriot missile system that has an automatic mode. And more of our drones will have fully autonomous capability. The next is cognitive electronic warfare. Electronic warfare is crucial. It is becoming a major player in all of the wars that I talked about, but now it is being enabled by AI so that it can be even stronger and more capable, because it'll work 24/7 without human involvement. So cognitive electronic warfare will be a huge disruptor. The next is the kill web. You know what a kill chain is. That's what we do to get rounds on target. It takes a series of steps, and humans are involved in the loop at certain points to approve the fires and get them onto the target. A kill web is different. A kill web is an artificial intelligence enabled kill chain. So imagine a Excel spreadsheet where one column is all the targets that are seen by sensors, by all of the sensors in the battle space. The next column, where everything that can kill those that are in range and can target those targets, is listed. And then the next column is whether you want to execute those targets in any particular way, all at once, one at a time, one every day, whatever you want. We will be able to, and the Israelis are very close in using this already, but we are working on this, and so are the Russians and the Chinese, so that we could, in fact, link all shooters with all sensors and be able to fire them simultaneously. Now, this works very well in a first strike. It doesn't work as well as things begin to break down, and you can see all the problems that it could cause. But imagine a first strike with a kill web. The next is the super swarm. Swarming is a tactic. General Custer was swarmed at the Little Bighorn, and that's not something you want to be in a situation like. You don't want to be Custer. But what you have to understand is that swarming as a tactic is just attacking the enemy from multiple directions all at once. But imagine a super swarm is a cloud of artificial intelligence enabled drones that fly overhead and attack, according to their targeting parameters, everything underneath it. And super swarms are being developed, and I'll show you a video of one later. When this happens, we're going to have a huge problem in counter UAS, because how do you shoot down a super swarm? And we're also going to have a huge problem in trying to defend against it. Now, we're working on this as well as the Chinese. Visualize the battle space. Right now, we have a huge problem in visualizing the battle space. Most of you understand what a common operational picture is. Very few of you have a common operational picture. In other words, is your picture translatable directly to the next higher echelon and the next higher echelon and the next higher echelon? And if you say yes, then I ask you simply, what are the elements of your common operational picture? And if you don't know what the elements are, in other words, it consists of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things. If those things are not common, then how can it be common? The point is we have a problem in visualizing the battle space. We particularly have a problem in visualizing across all domains. How do you see in cyber? How does a commander see in space what he needs to see in space? So we need artificial intelligence support to visualize the battle space, and we need new systems to do so. The next, for instance, in visualizing the battle space, if you cannot visualize multiple domains, how can you execute cross-domain maneuver? The next is decision dominance. We want decision dominance. So does the enemy. How do you get decision dominance? You put almost all these things together above with you and get them working for you, so that on your side, it looks as if the enemy's standing still and you're hitting them 10 or 15 times. That's decision dominance. It's the OODA loop squared, and that's what we need to be moving toward. And we need support from artificial intelligence and many other systems to be able to do it extremely well. But we can still execute and get decision dominance without AI. So here's an idea of cognitive electronic warfare, just to give you a visualization. So place these systems in the battle space, and they can defend you. They'll become targets, so you'll have to defend them. They can fly, they could drive. There's many ways to have these out, but they could be fixed sites. So there are many ways to do this, but you just saw one. The problem is we don't have these deployed yet. What do you have in your unit? You have no cognitive electronic warfare. Now let's talk about what's going on in Ukraine, just so you can get a scale of the casualties involved. Last October, I call Red October for the Russians, because they lost over 45,000 casualties in that month. And some say they lost 46,000 or more in December and November. So 46,000 in November and even more in December. The exact numbers, of course, are hard to tell, but we know they're significant, and we know they're this high. And Estonian intelligence is pretty good on this. This isn't Ukrainian intelligence, it's Estonian, and they really want to know what's happening. Think about that. What would happen if we had 45,000 casualties in our army in 1 month? Think of the turnover. Think of what you have to do. This is the scale and the lethality of modern combat, large-scale operations. So if we have to fight North Korea, China, Iran, or Russia, and we survive their first strike, we may end up in this kind of a situation with very heavy casualties. Now, we think we're smarter than the Russians. We think we're better than the Russians, we think that none of this would ever happen to us. Be careful. Be careful. We need to be thinking about what could happen and how we're going to fix these things. We need to be harder to kill. Now, there are many kind of drones out there. Basically, 5 major types. There's ISR, small UAS. So there is intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance drones that help as a layer of sensors at the low tactical level that see everything in both day and night, thermal, electronic, many other means, also acoustic. They see things, they take pictures of things, they take video of things, and they in fact direct the other small UAS, the bomber small UAS that drop either grenades or RPGs or artillery shells or mines like this one is. The next are the FPV drones. You saw an FPV drone operator at the beginning of my presentation. That picture is what a goggle wearing VR goggle operator sees. They are basically flying the drone in their mind and flying it with their hands, and they are actually using these very fast racing style drones with RPGs and other kind of missiles and warheads on them to strike and kill, almost anything on the battle space. And they are very difficult to counter. And now the Russians and even the Ukrainians are using fiber optic wire guided FPV drones. So they're almost impossible to jam. Their range is anywhere from 2 to 10 kilometers. So this is something we need to be training against. We also need to have our own. How many FPV drones do you have in your unit? The next are loitering munitions. The loitering munitions are higher end drones. They are drones like the Switchblade that fly up and above the battle space and loiter over the battle space, looking for targets according to their targeting parameters, and then destroying those targets when you either give them the permission to hit, or you automatically give them the mission to seek and find and destroy. And they can do that on their own. And the next is unmanned combat aerial vehicles, which are drones much like Predator and Reaper and smaller ends like the TB2, Bayraktar TB2 and others that fly with missiles on their wings and basically are unmanned aircraft that shoot missiles and drop bombs, and also can be used for jamming and decoys and everything else. Now, the democratization of this drone warfare has occurred dramatically in the last 4 years. And the cheap and attritable phase of this is what makes it so powerful. It is precise, it is difficult to knock down, and it is cheap. So the price of a drone in the thousands compared to the price of a tank or a rocket system in the millions, the return on investment there is obvious. So these have made a tremendous difference in warfare in the Middle East, because the Israelis use drones all the time, and also in Ukraine. And you have seen, I am sure, many videos of Ukrainian drones taking out Russian armored vehicles and Russian troops. And now they hunt individual soldiers. And they simply need to have a team of 2 and then a support team of 5 or 6 who arm and put these on. The average Ukrainian drone operator, FPV drone operator, may go through 60 drones in one night, starting at 6 p.m., 1800, and finishing the next morning. 60 drones, and out of those 60 get maybe 20 hits. But those 20 hits are rocket systems, tanks, soldiers in dugouts, squads, individual troops, command posts. They are very precise when used right, when used well, and they're difficult to counter unless you've thought it through. What is your unit's counter UAS plan? What is your unit's counter UAS battle drill? If you don't have one, why aren't you thinking about this? You don't even have to have a drone in order to have a battle drill. Now, the new high ground that we have to start always thinking about is all above us. It's basically the ground all the way to the stratosphere, but the drone battle space is pretty high. It goes from the ground to several thousand feet. What we have to be able to do is now think through all this, because we're no longer in a two-dimensional battle space where we're consistently worried about the enemy tank coming at us. We're worried now about being hit from the top and being seen by sensors from the top. So we really need to change how we think. And if we don't, we'll end up in a bad situation, much like many of the Russians and Ukrainians are in the Russo-Ukrainian war. When they get found by enemy sensors, they get pulverized. The target that sticks out gets hammered. Now, the Ukrainians last year in 2023, which is almost 2 years now ago, they used 10,000 drones a month. How many drones do you have in your unit? 10,000 drones a month across the entire front. But now they use more than 50,000. So 50,000 drones a month. We are behind in being able to conduct drone warfare. We have companies that have made some wonderful kit, some wonderful pieces of equipment. How much of it is deployed? How much do you have your hands on? How many of you have used the Black Hornet that is in your arms rooms? And if you haven't, how many of you have at least practiced with a hobby drone or maybe a blue approved drone that you can use in training? More importantly, how many times do you have a drone flying above your training, constantly taking video of what you look like so you can see what the enemy will look at you like? The enemy will see you from the top.
Drones are the future. This is a drone war, really.
This is the workforce of this war.
When one soldier sitting 2 kilometers away flies one drone into the sky, it performs the function of a whole reconnaissance company.
Our presence for us.
Now, the drones are very capable. The Russian drones have a range and a lethality that we need to understand. So I know some of you have studied the Russian way of war, and you know this, but many of you probably don't. So pay attention to the ranges that most of these drones have.
As we all know, this is the era of drone warfare, and Russia's strategy has been evolving. They have started using fiber optic drones due to the increasing use of electronic warfare by the Ukrainian army. In short, these are invincible to radar or radio. Let's look at their drones and their various purposes. Orlan drones are launched for surveillance and can penetrate nearly 600 kilometers into a country. The second type of drones are FPV, guided by fiber optic cables. These have a range of only 1 kilometer or about 1.2 miles. Standard FPV or first-person view drones, on the other hand, have a range of 10 kilometers or roughly 5 miles and more. Next are the Lancet drones. These are advanced main battle tank killers capable of flying for 40 kilometers or about 24 miles. Finally, there are the Iranian Shahed drones, which can travel up to 1,000 kilometers or approximately 620 miles.
The point of showing you that is to say that there's no safe place now in the battle space. You can't say you're 5 kilometers behind the lines, therefore let's get everyone together. For instance, at the National Training Center recently, there was a Blue Force that was planning a mission and had their rehearsal with a large terrain map out in the open. As they stood over the terrain map, an OP4 sensor, so high they couldn't see it, zoomed in on them with a high-speed camera and recorded the entire rehearsal. And that was just an ISR drone. Imagine if they had then put a first-person view drone down and killed everyone in the command group, all those leaders that were planning the operation. With all your officers dead, you've got a new situation. You've got a real challenge. Now, President Zelensky of Ukraine says that they will produce 4 million drones a year. He's talking about mostly small UAS, like the ones you see in this picture. 4 million. Now, they haven't done that yet. They produced about 1 million this year. Now, here's an interesting comment. There's a difference in the war now. In 2022, similar to 2014, you'd finish military education, become a Marine, super muscular, bench pressing 200 kilograms, a cool guy that no one could compare to. But nowadays, this cool guy walks through the trench. And an 18 to 19-year-old kid who grew up playing Counter-Strike and Need for Speed is piloting an FPV drone and takes out the Marine, and that's it. Now, that doesn't mean that just because people play video games, they're good at drone operations. Far from it. It takes great training to be a good FPV drone operator, months of training. And using any drone takes a lot of training. And if you have never tried it, you need to try it, because the more drone operators we have, the better off we are. Why don't we have drone racing teams in every one of our units and compete against each other to create more drone operators? Think about it.
Drive.
The drones are so good that they can take out motorcyclists trying to evade them. Now, the Russians are using motorcyclists to pass information back and forth through written orders. And the reason for that is because of electronic warfare is finding out that when they give orders over the radio, the Ukrainians are listening in. But killing the messenger stops the message from getting there. But imagine drones that would kill people on a motorcycle. 10 years ago, you couldn't imagine that. But now this is the face of war. And this is incredible. I want you to really pay attention to this. This 25-year-old FPV pilot in the Ukrainian army, Timothy Orel, from the 47th Mech Brigade, he was awarded the Golden Star, Hero of Ukraine, because from January to May 2024, just a few months, he eliminated 434 Russian soldiers, killed them. 346 were wounded. He destroyed 42 tanks, 44 BMPs, 10 MTLBs, and 28 BTR APCs. This one FPV drone operator, and it's all corroborated on video. So this isn't something they just guess at. They know it. Can you imagine? This one guy did this. Now, not everybody is as good as him. And every drone operation that you see on TV, there's about 10 or 20 that fail. They don't show those as much. But drone precision is real. The ability to use small UAS in combat is a force. We need to understand it. We need to change our thinking. So this is an M1, a US-made M1 Abrams tank destroyed by Russian drones. Our best system. And what they do is they use two drones. They first come out and make a mobility kill. Either they hit it at the engine, or they hit it at the tracks, or they somehow destroy the ability of the vehicle to move. And then they come in with another drone and they put it in a very, very sensitive spot. Now, as soon as this happens, most of the crews immediately run out of the vehicle. You didn't see that here. This particularly happens in Russian tanks, because in Russian tanks, your ammunition is all around you. You know, I've been in a T-72, and I've actually gone down a qualification run with a T-72 tank. And all that ammunition and the robotic loader is right there with you. When that goes off, everyone's dead. So when a Russian tank is hit at all in any place, the crew immediately evacuates and abandons tank. And when they do that, they leave the hatches open, because who's going to stop and and take the time to close the hatches? So enemy FPV drones then come and they go right into the hatch, or drop a grenade into the hatch, and they destroy the tank completely, so it can't be recovered. Now, this is a drone swarm. This is, again, a Chinese use of drones to have a very beautiful light display. Now, remember that China started off gunpowder in ancient history. They were the first really to discover gunpowder. But it was the Europeans who really started to use gunpowder in a major way for warfare. The Chinese did too, but they started off just using it for entertainment. So right now, this is entertainment. But their military use of swarms is real and being practiced as well.
You are about to witness one of the most extraordinary drone shows ever created. In Shenzhen, China, 7,598 drones lit up the night sky, setting a Guinness World Records title in the process. The display officially became the largest aerial image formed by drones, with more than double the number of drones used in the previous record. This breathtaking show was organized to celebrate the 72nd anniversary of Yanbian Korean Autonomous Prefecture, with the drones provided by Shenzhen Demoda Intelligent Control Technology Company Limited. A single laptop was all it took to control the fleet, with the system monitoring each drone's status in real time. The drones shifted continuously across the night sky, forming iconic images like the Great Wall and a majestic dragon, while also paying tribute to Yanbian's unique culture.
So imagine that same drone cloud now, though equipped with explosives and being able to move from one point to the next, not lighting up, staying quiet, staying dark, but finding targets underneath it and destroying them. The Chinese, of course, have the largest and the most effective or the most advanced drone industry in the world. Most of the drones that you buy for hobby drones are all made in China. So when you start looking at a 90% or higher ability of the drones in the world be made by China, their ability to scale up if there was a war is even more pronounced. So imagine the ability to put those drones in Connex containers on ships and send them anywhere in the world. And then when you want to open them, you open them up and they fly. Now, nothing is easy. All of our enemies are not 10 feet tall. They have huge problems too, but we need to be worried about the worst case, and we need to be thinking because they are. And they say they're going to use these in warfare, in swarms. Now, here are some things that I think we need to do to transform now. And I mean transform you, your thinking, the way you think about warfare and the way you think about preparing for war and getting your soldiers ready. First, you need to understand and embrace the 10 disruptors of modern warfare that I talked about. Know what they are, think about them, read about them. The next, you need to adopt masking at every echelon, and I'll explain masking in a second. Remember, the target that sticks out will get hammered. Our logistics setups are woefully unprepared for modern war. Our combat service support battalions, our logistics setups are clumps and big groups of ammunition and fuel and water and food and first aid supplies and spare parts. We use convoys to move things back and forth. None of that works in Ukraine right now. The Russians and the Ukrainians destroy those whenever they can. You can read almost every day about ammunition dumps, command posts, other primary priority targets being destroyed. So we need to understand that this battle space, there are no sanctuaries. We cannot operate the way we have been. To win the tactical fight, we need to control the new high ground with both kinetic and non-kinetic means. That means we need to be able to shoot down their drones or jam them. And we also need to make sure ours can get through. And every drone we send up, we should send up 2 or 3 decoys. But how many of our drones come with decoy drones? These are things we need to think through and demand that we have these things deployed. Now, masking is something that I want you to take a picture of. Take a picture of this screenshot. I want you to take this to your heart and really think about it, because masking is the most important thing you can do right now. Too many people tell me they can't do this. They can't really solve the drone problem. They want someone else to solve it. That's the wrong thinking. Every leader solves problems by leadership and by adapting tactics, techniques, and procedures. It's your job. So you need to understand masking. Masking is the full spectrum, which means we'll do everything we can all across the board. Multi-domain effort, meaning every domain is involved. To deceive enemy sensors, we deceive their sensors and then disrupt their targeting. How can we disrupt their targeting? So your job needs to be to think about how to deceive their sensors and disrupt their targeting. It doesn't matter whether you're a corporal or whether you're a general. If you're a squad leader, you have to think through, how will I deceive the enemy sensors from seeing me? What can I do to camouflage better? What can I do to mask my forces from the enemy sensors? And then what can I do to disrupt the enemy targeting? And you say, there's nothing I can do to disrupt the enemy targeting. There certainly is. For instance, every time you set up a defensive position, you always set up decoys, right? What, you don't? You don't set up decoys? Big lesson from the Ukrainian war. If you don't set up decoys, the enemy just has it easier to look for you. You should set up decoys every time. And you can use decoys in both the offensive and defensive if you're clever. Those ways you can disrupt the enemy targeting. You'll deceive his sensors and disrupt his targeting because he'll start shooting at things that aren't real. Now, we need to either mask or die, and we need to mask in 5 areas. The optical, which is camouflage. We need to be able to take away the enemy's ability to see us with the naked eye and binoculars and optics. 2, thermal. We need to figure out how to blend into our thermal background. Not easy, but a lot harder if you don't even try. 3rd, we need to have electronic masking. Just imagine if you turned off all your electronics for a period of time. What if you went dark on orders for maybe 2 hours prior to moving out for the attack? The enemy couldn't find you. This picture is the National Training Center, a brigade combat team in the sandbox. The red area is the highest level of electronic transmission. The yellow is next, and then the green. If you're the enemy and you have this picture from a small UAS or a satellite or an aircraft, you know exactly where to launch your long-range precision fires. It's against the red. Imagine if all that went dark, there was nothing there because everybody turned off their electronics for a short period of time. Also, how many electronic devices do you have that are on in your systems, in your TOCs, in your command posts, all across the entire fleet of your vehicles that are on that don't need to be on? Only have your critical elements on. We need to start using radio listening silence. Brevity codes make our transmission shorter. A lot of things we can do now without extra equipment, without new stuff. The next is acoustic. Acoustic sensors are being used in Ukraine very effectively, particularly to be able to find and locate incoming drones. The Ukrainians have set up a series of listening posts using smartphones and other microphone devices in order to hear the Shahed drones coming in and know where they're coming, know what angle they're coming in from, and get their location, and then send forces out to destroy them. They set up mobile anti-aircraft systems that can get into the lane of the incoming drone and shoot it down, and they're fairly effective. But acoustics are being used more and more, and it's passive. So many drones have acoustic sensors. And these acoustic sensors listen to the sound of the guns. So if the artillery is shooting, the sensor will hear that and be able to find out where they are and then report that information. And the next is quantum. Quantum is more exotic right now, but this is something you need to know about. The Chinese have radars that they say are able to see our stealth aircraft because they're quantum radars. Now, they don't have that many of them, and we're not so sure how well they work, but we have seen our own quantum radars demonstrated against our own stealth aircraft, and it gives away the location of stealth aircraft. Now, there's only a few quantum radars, and they're very, again, expensive, but this will get cheaper, and they'll have more of them over time. And eventually, quantum will become a bigger and bigger thing in the decade that comes. So you need to be aware of it. But the first 4, optical, thermal, electronic, acoustic, every leader needs to figure this out. Optical, we need to be the best at camouflage in the world. Are we? Thermal, we need to blend into our background so that we don't always give off a really hot signature, particularly when we don't have to. Turn everything off, put them under tarps. Do we do this? Electronic, can you reduce your electronic signature and possibly go dark for periods of time on order and then back on order, come back up? Can we do that? Acoustic, we need to lower our noise level. Almost all of you have tried to find the command post at some time in the dark, and they said they were at the one grid, and they really weren't. You just had to take off your helmet, listen for the sound of the generators, and you'd find them. Well, the drones will do the same thing. This is an example of how the Russians mask their tanks, and it's fairly effective. They have a special tarp that they put over their tanks, which helps reduce their thermal signature and any other signature they have, their optical signature. Of course, the tank is turned off. It only works in the assembly area. It only works in the hide position. But it is a method, is something that they practice and use, because if they don't, they get killed. This is an example of how you disguise a weapon system to look like an ordinary truck. Now, any truck might be hit by an FPV just because it's a truck. But if you had a multiple rocket launcher and a truck, which would you hit first? And here what you have is a camouflage multiple rocket launcher. Again, not that unbelievably impossible to think through, but the Russians are doing this because they have to. Otherwise, they die. So we also need to do other things. We need to deploy formations equipped with new systems. The new high ground is from ground level to the stratosphere. We need to deploy cognitive electronic warfare, and we need to have cognitive counter UAS systems. Right now, what is your counter UAS system? Do you have a commander with forces in charge of the counter UAS fight? If not, how do you expect to win it? Or is that just going to come down on you like rain and we're going to consider it weather? We've got to figure out how to fight the counter UAS fight. The next, bots before boots. In everything we do, always, we need to figure out how to use robots first. To become harder to kill, we send the robots first. Now, you have some robotic systems. You have the small UAS that you have, the Black Hornet, and you may have some other systems available to you. Hopefully, we'll get more in the near future. But as always, we need to train to be harder to kill. Now, sensors generate real-time information sharing, and this is the total difference between 20th century war and 21st century war. The ability to integrate real-time information. So if you're a striker and you're going down a striker qualification lane, why don't you have a feed from a UAV, from an ISR UAV coming into your striker so that you can see over the hill? That is real-time information. That is 21st century warfare. What we do is the same thing we did in the 20th century. We go down the range, we look for targets. We have better systems sometimes to look for target, better thermals, whatever, but nonetheless, it's very two-dimensional and we're looking at the ground trying to find things. Why don't we have interconnectivity with drones? The Israelis do. The Ukrainians do. Why don't we? And we could be practicing this and thinking about it even if we don't have the systems. 6, we need to accelerate our OODA loop. An OODA loop is observe, orient, decide, and act loop with the integration of robotic systems to provide this real-time information advantage like I just explained. The idea that strikers and tanks and infantry would have way ahead of them robotic systems, drones, that would be looking for the enemy and giving that information back and maybe striking them gives us a much larger kill ratio, kill radius that allows us to kill them before we get into close combat. And then once we do get into close combat, the fighting should be easier if we've done this well.
Great cooperation between infantry and drones displayed by Ukrainian Battalion Strength of Freedom. A member of the Ukrainian National Guard engages in a trench firefight against Russian assault troops.
Those are Russian infantry.
Position until drones arrive to assist. The FPV pilots make a few precise drops to throw Russian forces back. Ukrainian forces have achieved a remarkable level of coordination between their drone units and ground troops, a tactic that has transformed the battlefield. By integrating real-time drone surveillance with frontline operations, Ukrainian units can track enemy movements, pinpoint vulnerabilities, and direct precise attacks. Drones relay critical information directly to ground commanders, allowing for rapid responses and well-coordinated maneuvers. This synergy between aerial and ground forces means that Ukrainian troops can disrupt Russian formations, hit high-value targets, and avoid ambushes more effectively than traditional reconnaissance methods would allow. In modern warfare, this level of integration is crucial. Drones provide a clear view of the battlefield, while ground units can capitalize on this information to strike with precision, conserve resources, and minimize casualties. This real-time intelligence has allowed Ukrainian forces to adapt quickly and outmaneuver Russian troops, who often rely on more rigid, top-down communication structures. The Ukrainian approach demonstrates how vital drones have become, not only as surveillance tools, but as a core element in an agile, responsive fighting strategy that defines 21st century combat. This dynamic coordination between air and ground assets showcases a powerful model of modern warfare, where information flow and adaptability can be just as decisive as firepower.
Well,
Hey,
that's it.
John. Excuse me. Hey, John.
Yes.
Hey,
Yeah.
for time's sake, I just like to thank you so much for your transformative lecture. And I know I just want to offer you some closing comments as we have to close up. And I know you have your email if you could offer it, but I'll give the final word to you, John.
Okay, almost done there, but I understand. I talk to soldiers, teams, leaders almost every week. I will be happy to work with any of you and any of your teams if you need me. You can reach me at johnantel.com, and you also can talk to your command about getting, directly my email address and everything. But please contact me if I can help you. And what I want you to do is think hard about these things that we just talked about and figure out how you can make the difference at your level, even if you don't have new equipment. You can develop new TTP. Your leadership can make the difference. It's okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, I know there's always too much good stuff, and I could listen to John forever. Thank you so much, John. I hope you're still on net. I hope you got my email. We have something special for you, so please. I know you got a million things in your wall, but we got something that you'll love. All right.